Well, good evening, kids. How is everybody doing? Welcome to the Abyss. This is the Eternal Abyss. I want to say hello, and I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. For those that may be following, I did miss a stream last week. Things have been very busy. Hold up. I got my little text here that's still showing up. 1 second. I apologize for that. There we go. But yes, definitely do what that scrolling text was saying. Follow, share, donate if you're feeling generous and if you like the content and if you want to support conservative voices, please do so. So that's my shameless plug for the moment. I got a slew of topics that I'd like to cover for today. And there's a lot of interesting things that are happening, and it's so difficult to stay on top of things, especially when you have media outlets all with their own biases, mostly left leaning, but you do have biases on all sides. One thing that I noticed in some other online commentators, what they've been doing to try and kind of get a good perspective on the news and the latest and greatest of what's going on. I've seen some websites come up that try to show the bias of a news source. Now, while the efforts are noble, the implementation is where the question comes up. How well is that sort of feature or service, actually would be a more accurate term, how well that service is implemented. Enter allsides.com. I saw Tim Pool use this. I've seen some other YouTubers kind of dabble into that. And I thought I'd use it for this stream to see if it provides an interesting perspective or not. It may be something that I'm going to use ongoing because I want to try, as much as I am a conservative, and I do obviously have a conservative bent and bias in my podcast here, in my live streaming, I do want to try and show both sides of the argument, mostly because 9.99999% of the, 99.99999% of the time, you're going to see that the leftists get it wrong. And the conservative view, even though the conservative view may have their own biases, they're generally on point on a lot of things. Because our side, the conservative side, I would argue, is more planted in reality. Our feet are solidly on the ground. We are more reliant on pragmatism, facts, reality, truth, objective truth. Let's be clear. So, said that's I wanted to just premise these points that I'm saying that I'm going to be talking about today, these news items that I'm going to be talking about today, because you may see the same source that I bring up as an initial source, because I'm going to show you here with the browser and everything. You may see that I use that for several articles, and just to kind of give that sort of perspective. And I wanted to just give people a heads up about that in case people were wondering, well, why are you using something that's showing leftist, center, right, whatever, So I thought I'd just kind of give a primer, a little, not a primer, but a little kind of disclaimer at the beginning here, just to explain kind of where my sources are coming from, honestly. Because that's one thing before I continue, last little tidbit, that is one thing that many times I question with many people that either on Twitter or other social media or YouTubers that comment on news of the day. Take, for example, Steven Crowder. I enjoy watching his program because he's the type of person that, sure, like a conservative and like myself, he has his own biases. Ben Shapiro has his own biases. Other YouTubers, let's say Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks, He obviously has his own biases. But the difference here between like a Steven Crowder or a Ben Shapiro versus a Cenk Uygur is the fact that these guys, the conservative side, Shapiro and Crowder, they will provide sources for their claims. They will show articles and studies and data to back up what they're talking about. And it's not stuff that's really open that much to interpretation unless you just ignore what you're looking at, which people do. It's not unheard of, but that's what it is. So one of the big things that happened, like in these past couple of weeks, that I didn't get a chance to comment on really, and I wanted to. But unfortunately, I didn't get a chance because I didn't stream for like a good amount of time actually, because I skipped a week. Was the Isreal trip that the representatives were doing, our U.S. representatives, and 2 individuals got banned. I laugh about this, but really, if you think about it, how embarrassing is it that you're such an outspoken anti-Semite, racist, anti-Israel person that you basically force a country to enforce their own rules to essentially block you from entering their country? How ridiculous is that? Let's just put that in perspective for a moment before I even continue any further. Just think, to me, that is a total embarrassment. It's an absolute embarrassment. They should hang their heads in shame. And this is the best part. I didn't hear much coming out of Omar, because Ilhan Omar and Tlaib were the ones that essentially got the ban hammer from Israel, from Netanyahu. And I didn't hear a lot coming out of the Omar camp because I think they were, maybe I missed it, and if I missed it, then I missed it. But if they didn't say something, I'm going to go on the assumption that they didn't for now. And if they didn't for real, then I would say that if they decided to go that route, that may have been the best route to go. Mostly because they already are an embarrassment for the fact that a country blocked them from entering due to their hateful, racist rhetoric. Go figure. If you're going to try and make a case for yourself and dig yourself into a bigger hole, enter Rashida Tlaib, who did exactly that. Wow. So Tlaib, I'm sure many people are well aware of her. There's not much reason for me to kind of go over who she is, what she's done. She's been a complete loudmouth, vulgar, violent individual, which how she's even eligible to be a representative is beyond me. I mean, I don't think that someone who goes to rallies and acts essentially absolutely insane should be even allowed close to DC, in the Capitol building or anything like that. She's a menace, a public menace, frankly. But let's put that aside. Essentially, she comes out and says, I just wanted to see my grandmother. That's why I wanted to go on the trip. She's 90, which, by the way, this grandmother, there's articles that then came out saying, it's just such a lovely grandmother. Everyone should wish to have a grandmother like hers. Well, last I checked, that grandmother was wishing death to people, saying that, wishing destruction, wishing that Allah would bring destruction to people. No, I'm good with with the grandparents that I had. I'm good with that. I'm good with that. Trust me. I don't need grandparents that wish death upon people and wish that God or Allah in this case bring devastation and destruction to folks. That's That doesn't sound like a loving grandmother, you know? That's just me. I could be wrong, but I think most people would agree with me on that one. So moving on, what ended up happening was she sends a communication over to Netanyahu, to Israel. Israel goes, okay, and then she goes, oh no, I'm not gonna go with your conditions, which Israel never had. They had agreed to let her come in to see her grandmother. She said she was going to come in, see her grandmother, not say anything, and then she backs out saying, oh, they wanted to put all these unreasonable restrictions on me. I'm not going to go. Screw my grandma. Who cares about the grandma at this point? So, obviously, it was never about the grandma. The grandmother was never an issue. She was used, as horrible a grandmother that is, wishing death and destruction upon people. That woman was used by Tlaib for just political purposes, which is what she does. This is what she does. This is what that group of 4 reps do. They just create political controversy for the sake of political controversy because they think that attention gives them some sort of agency or gives them a platform that they can start spouting nonsense from. But the problem is that whenever they get that attention, it's not that they make something positive out of that attention. They just keep digging themselves in this hole of stupidity, and they just keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's ridiculous. At the end of the day, it's absolutely ridiculous what these people are doing. And like I said, they're an embarrassment. They're frankly an embarrassment. And I really wish that now, in 2020, I think all of them and a large number of senators and representatives are going to be on the chopping table, essentially, so to speak. They're going to be on the elections table, where we as a people are going to have an opportunity to say, "Hey, get the hell out of here." And I wish a lot of people would do that, especially with these folks. The Democrats in general have been a very detrimental party to our nation, but these particular socialist, commie, crazy people are essentially tearing apart the Democratic Party. And it's not that I'm really sad to see the Democrat Party being kind of torn apart. I will admit there's some Schadenfreude, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I may be mispronouncing that. I don't like to indulge in that, but in this particular scenario, because the Democrat Party has been such a hateful party, such a violent party, these folks, especially, for example, Omar has not condemned violence. AOC has not condemned violence. These people incite violence, and they never condemn it. It's a very, very bad thing, in my view, at least. I think it's very bad. So here's a news article that came out. When I first heard this news article, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, in the sense that the consequence of what happened, of what I had read, didn't match quite, after reading the article, what actually really happened. So apparently there's these trans women, 2, that got ejected from a bar. And the original news snippet that I saw said that then the bar gave these people their profits, which that's not accurate. What ended up happening was this. There was an altercation between these 2 trans women and a male and female couple. And all of them were asked to leave. For some reason, things got more violent with the trans women, because apparently the trans women didn't want to go. So they got violently kicked out. They were grabbed and kicked out. And I have a new snippet here that I can show about that. Let me bring this up for you. And I'm going to get this video up and running so we can make some commentary on this as we watch the video. So hold up. Pause. Volume. And let me activate this here so you guys can actually see what I see. Oh, it's kind of chopped here. Let me very quickly. Sometimes with OBS, you have to deal with cropping. So let me just adjust the cropping on this. So, pardon me, sorry. Okay, so that should work just nicely. So let me transition this over here. So here we go. Apparently, what was going on here, there's oops, hold up. Let me see what I'm doing here. Okay. So there's video footage captured of the incident that happened. The post-incident. You only see them getting kicked out. We don't know exactly what was said. There's alleged things that were said by one party towards the other party. So the transgendered women are accusing the other party of saying, quote unquote, transphobic stuff. And nobody talked. And this is the problem with like ABC News, for example. Nobody's interviewing the other side. They're only showing one side. They're ignoring the straight couple. And they're saying they're not providing any evidence that the straight couple did anything to deserve being kicked out physically versus them deserving to be kicked out physically. But then the video doesn't even show anything at the end of the day, in the sense that you see just the trans women being kicked out. But you don't see if they were being violent, if they were refusing to leave. You only see that part. It's very convenient to only see the part where the bouncers are kicking out these two dudes, essentially, because that's what they are. They're dudes. So let's play this for you guys. Let me make sure that my volume here is up and running for desktop stuff. Here we go.
Not one more. 3 transgender women stand in front of a vocal crowd of supporters. Cell phone video shows 2 of the women being grabbed by security guards and forcibly removed from Las Perlas.
Okay, so before I continue, first things first. This kind of reporting is the problem, in my opinion. Calling them women, they're not women. All right? We as a society need to stop encouraging mental illness. We need to stop calling people what they are not. And we need to stick to science and biology. The left accuses the right very much and very often of being anti-science, And it's very interesting to me that even news articles won't even bat an eye and say, these dudes that think they're women went through all sorts of hormonal treatments, operations, whatever they did, because they believe what they believe. We're going to call them women. When in reality, they were not born that way. Which is also another thing which I find very interesting, because there's this whole thing about, when there was a whole argument for gay marriage. There's this whole born this way movement that went along with it. So it's like, okay, left, LGBT, Q, X, Y, Z, silent R. Which one is it? You can't have both sides of the coin. You can't have both sides of the argument when you're trying to normalize your behaviors. It just doesn't work that way. You either abide by science, we're born this way, this is what we are, you can't change it, or you go by, this is entirely social construct, we can do whatever the heck we want. If I identify as a caribou, I'm going to turn myself into a caribou. Or if I identify as a piece of broccoli, I'm going to be a piece of broccoli. So it doesn't make sense to me to have both sides of that argument and claim both are correct when they are actually contradictory. But moving on.
Bar on Friday night.
Don't talk to me like that. I think to see men drag a woman and
they were not women, sir.
Treat a woman that way and not be able to do anything. I was there. I was there.
Jorge Diaz is seen on video being thrown out of the bar with his friends. The ugly scene happening after several co-workers from Bienestar, an organization that addresses LGBTQ health issues, went to Las Perlas after the downtown LA Proud Festival.
One of our trans sisters was harassed, physically assaulted, slapped on the face by a man, started calling...
Okay, let me pause for a moment here, because this person, if you listen to the actual individual that got removed forcibly from the bar, they don't mention about anything physical occurring to them. In the argument with the guy and woman, they were just talking about how they were verbally abused, that they got aggressive, but that individual never said that couple or the guy in the of that straight couple actually put his hands on him, really. So at the end of the day, I don't know what this person is talking about because the other articles have not corroborated that. So my suspicion is that this is hyperbole. This is exaggeration. This is adding stuff to make it sound even worse than what it really was. And I don't know that if that's the case, that this person is just lying about what this other couple did, then that's not a very good thing. And I think what this individual and the organization that this person represents, if that's what they do, accuse people without any evidence, then that's something that reporters, but this is Mr. John Hayworth here, reporters should have a little bit of self-responsibility here, and it would behoove them to verify these claims if they're just going to put them in a video going, well, if there's an investigation pending, especially because there is, you'll see, I'll show you the tweet by the LAPD. There is an investigation pending now, so we'll see if this person actually said what they're claiming is true or not. I have no idea, but it seems very interesting that of all the people talking, including the ones that got thrown out, this individual is the only one that's actually claiming a physical assault occurred. I find that strange. We'll continue.
Slurs.
Other friends say they were called offensive names by the customer and his female companion.
So the guy started getting aggressive. They started yelling at me, calling me all sorts of names, saying that I was a man.
Las Perlas.
Let me pause for another moment here. Calling you a man is not a slur and is not an insult. It is biology. And again, this goes back to the very beginning of my discussion here. This is silly that we're denying basic biology and basic science. If you don't like it, you have every right to not like it. But to try and paint it as a slur or an insult, no. I'm sorry. It doesn't go. It doesn't fly. It doesn't work that way.
Says both groups were told to leave, but the co-workers say they were the only ones forcibly removed.
Okay, and this is what I was talking about, and the fact that the video doesn't show why they were the only ones forcibly removed versus the straight couple. Could it be that they were the ones that were refusing to leave while the straight couple obliged and said, fine, we'll go? They never explained this. ABC News does not explain this either. They don't provide any information about that. Nobody in this whole story is explaining why they were the only ones forcibly removed. They're just focusing on the fact that they were the only ones forcibly removed. But if, according to their rules, because they mentioned this, if the rules say, okay, all parties involved in this altercation, you need to go. And if you don't go on your own volition, you're going to be forcibly removed. Then there's nothing discriminatory about that sort of policy, because it's not saying if two parties are involved in an altercation and they're asked to... I saw some frames drop in my stream for a second. If two parties... The policy doesn't say if there are two parties involved in an altercation, one is a transgendered couple and one is straight, and they're both asked to leave, then the straight couple, you don't forcibly remove them. The transgender one, you do. No, the policy stands for everybody, equality, equal. It doesn't matter straight, gay, transgender. It doesn't matter male, female. Doesn't matter. If the policy says you're asked to leave, you don't. The bouncers can grab you and throw you out. So, am I missing something here? I don't think I'm missing something here. It sounds pretty straightforward to me. Let's continue. Of course, they would protest.
Supporters of LGBTQ rights protested outside the bar.
All the constant attacks on transgender women that we have seen each and every day, where every other week we're looking at another woman who's been killed in the streets.
Citation. Dude, what are you talking about? Where are you getting such statistics? I have never heard of anything like that. That's quite a claim. That is quite a claim to make. From all the statistics that I've read, I have never heard that every day you have a trans person being killed. And let's pretend that that was the case, all right? Let's say that his little statistic that he drops without any sort of thought or citation or source, let's pretend that that's true. Does that necessarily mean that it's related to the fact that they're transgendered? You know, if a transgendered person gets into a car accident and dies, was the car committing a hate crime? I mean, just because someone has it falls within a certain demographic or group or identity, political identity, let's call it that. If someone falls within a political identity and they happen to get killed in one form or another, you can't assume that the motivation behind that is phobic in some way or ist in some way, like racist or sexist or whatever. You can't make that assumption if the evidence doesn't point to that. But you have people like this individual who's more than happy to drop statistics that he pulled apparently out of his rear end, because I've never seen anything like that. But moving on.
Tonight, one of the trans women seen in the video too emotional to talk about the experience.
My friend Fernanda, she was physically grabbed, manhandled, and choked and dragged out of the club.
In a statement, the bar says this was a rare and unfortunate incident, as Las Perlas has provided an inclusive and welcoming environment since it opened almost 10 years ago.
And that's the report on this. So what ended up happening here was that, you know, the bar, they tried to, kind of appease the situation by giving all their profits for one, I think was that night or something like that. I'm not exactly, I didn't quite read here. Let's see if I can find that very quickly. They released a statement. Yeah, the bar, Las Perlas released a statement saying, "We'll continue to value and celebrate the diversity of the downtown Los Angeles community. We are so proud to be part of, and all profits from Las Perlas during this weekend's proud, DTLA proud event, essentially, will be donated to the BindStar Human Services." So, and this is one thing that that had confused me at first, because I had heard that they had given the profits to those transgendered individuals because of the incident. Instead, it's to the BindStar Human Services. And the LAPD is investigating that. So, we'll see if any other details come out. The thing with this sort of stuff that I see a lot of times is that a lot of fanfare is made at the beginning of these sort of things, because they're trying, as you see here, they're trying to turn this into a hate crime thing, which verbally just saying, first of all, it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even make sense, this whole incident, honestly, because it makes no sense that out of the blue, someone would just see two transgender people and go, "Hey, you're a dude!" Just yell at them at a bar. I mean, as much as I don't believe that trans women are actually women, or trans men are actually men. They're whatever their biology was when they were born. If I go to a restaurant and I see folks that are transgendered, I'm not gonna go and start yelling at them. Hey, you're actually a woman. No, you're a man. I don't know. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. These kind of stories for that specific reason, you know. But let me move on here. I don't want to dwell too much longer on this specific story because it's really, like I said, it's so limited, the information that they're kind of dropping to you. They're giving you just little droplets of information here and there without providing any real context of what happened, why it happened, what were the extenuating circumstances. There's nothing. There's nothing. So it's a very poor. I think ABC did a very bad job here in reporting this sort of thing. You would want, I would imagine, as a news organization, to try and provide more information as possible. I would imagine, but then again, there's a reason why they're called fake news. It is what it is. So one thing that I want to start talking about soon, and before I get into that, because it's kind of there are different stories, but they're all kind of related. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. It's about China. But before we do that, there's some latest and greatest, well, not necessarily greatest, but latest and most up-to-date news on Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I just realized that the source I'm using actually misspelled here. The initials. They did RGB instead of RBG. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, yeah. But let me show you here. This is one thing. I was having actually a hard time trying to find a source. And news articles about that, like Reuters. This guy's using Reuters, but it seems like not a lot of... the clipping here is not correct too, so let me adjust that real quick. Whoops. Hold up. Technical difficulties. Sorry, one moment. Hopefully I won't be a complete boomer on this. There we go. All right. So we can actually see the whole article now. So yeah, it seems like Ruth Bader Ginsburg has has a tumor on her pancreas. The cancer has returned. And the left is, I'm sure, losing their mind because they are so scared of this woman dying that the stuff that you see on Twitter about her, like they want her to be immortal. They really do. They just don't want this woman to die. They want her to stay on the court, on the bench there, and it's almost sad. Really, it's kind of sad to see how desperate the left is that they're grasping onto this 86-year-old woman because they think that someone who interprets the law as it's written and doesn't make up their own interpretations, they think that's bad. Go figure. I always thought that the law should be interpreted as it is. Instead of going, here's the law, I don't like it, I'm going to do my own thing. Okay. That doesn't quite follow what you're trained to do. That doesn't quite follow what the law is supposed to be. That's probably one of the big reasons why our judicial system is as messed up as it is in certain scenarios. Our judicial system is not too terrible, but there's a lot of issues with it. But yeah, so they apparently detected this in July, and they identified the tumor with a biopsy that they performed on July 1st, as you can see here. And it seems like that there's not a very good... Yeah, they provide a link talking about pancreatic cancer and a prognosis and life expectancy. They say it's 5 years, but the thing is, she already had this before, and it's come back. So, and she is 86. Who knows what the prognosis really is in that sense? She could keep going because I think the last one that she got was in 2009, if memory serves. I could be wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, it was 2009. And if she's been around after that for another 10 years, I mean, that's quite a feat on her end. She's, I guess, genetically, physically strong enough to and resilient enough to keep going beyond that. However, she's older now. This is a reoccurrence. It could be, as the left likes to say, problematic. Mostly because, see, this is the issue that I have. Let's forget politics for a moment. Let's forget the fact that she's an incredibly left-leaning justice. Let's just talk about what it takes to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court. I think that someone who's serving on the Supreme Court, because they're listening to such important cases, and they're very high-stakes cases most of the time. It's a very stressful environment. It's something that requires a lot of thought and study and research. And I know that they have aides and folks that help them with all this. I mean, it's not like the justices just sit down and start reading case law all by themselves. They have their little teams of folks that help them, which is fine. Not a big deal. But the thing for me is that if you have a history, much like RBG here, if you have a history of not interpreting the law according to the Constitution, you're interpreting it according to your own political agenda. You're also showing a clear conflict of interest when you are presiding over a gay marriage. You're the person doing the ceremony, and then you have to make a decision whether gay marriage should be legal or not. Last I checked, that doesn't seem right, that if someone does that, has the capacity to look at it objectively and has the capacity to interpret the law objectively. But this isn't something unique to RBG. This is something that even with Roe versus Wade, you have activist judges on all levels. This isn't just something at the Supreme Court. And all levels of courts, from like your little local town to the Supreme Court of the United States, you have activist judges. You have activist judges that decide, I'm going to interpret the law in my own way. I'm going to create some legal fiction or misinterpretation because I want things to fit my narrative. I don't want things to fit reality. For example, as I mentioned, Roe versus Wade. In order to have that pass the way it did and be legal to do abortions, the Supreme Court invented, the liberal side of the Supreme Court at that time, invented this legal concept, which is pure legal fiction, of this penumbra of privacy, which didn't exist. There was no precedence for it. It was just something that they pulled together out of nowhere to justify their ruling. And the result is they legalized abortions, and you had millions upon millions of innocents being massacred due to that. You know, it's a little mind-boggling when you think about it sometimes, that something like that just, they let it fly. Nobody nobody said, hey, I don't think this is really right. And, as much as I believe something, if I make a decision that has such a ramification, it would behoove me, if I was on the Supreme Court, to really, really consider the consequences of my actions here and the consequences of my decisions, which is why it's paramount that these judges really need to have, there has to be some system in place, I would think, in our judicial system that should monitor these rulings. And I know that the whole the whole way our judicial system is set up is supposed to, in theory, check this. Because when you appeal and then you appeal it to a higher court and to a higher court, in theory, it's supposed to catch these things. The problem is that you have such a widespread activism that's within the judicial system that that sort of check and balances may not necessarily work because of what you have, for example, in the Supreme Court now, or in the past. You have a divide, a political divide within a branch of government that should not be political. By design, it's not supposed to be. And I know that it's very difficult to divorce political beliefs from your decisions and from your day-to-day life. So I'm not expecting the Supreme Court or justices and judges in general to be absolutely objective, because that's nigh impossible. Most people cannot be purely objective. Actually, just about everybody cannot be purely objective. I don't think a human being exists that can be purely objective, but at least if you have a system like the law, you have a system that you can go to, look up the law, look at interpretations, see if there is something that everybody in the past with precedents that you have within law, to see if your interpretation is just a fiction of your imagination, or there's actual case history that goes, oh, hey, you know what? Yes, this court and this court in this case back up my interpretation of the law, so I can't be that far off. I would imagine that's how attorneys and judges should be looking at the law, and those that are strict, those that interpret the law in a stricter sense, do that. Folks that do not, like the old whole Obama, who ironically taught constitutional law, and then when he was president goes, meh, I'll just enforce what I feel like enforcing. Because according to him, the Constitution is a cafeteria. I like this part of the Constitution. I don't like this part of the Constitution. I'm going to ignore this one altogether. Maybe that one, I'll just enforce part of it. Really? Especially if you're president and you swore to uphold that Constitution and to execute laws faithfully. You'd think that that's what a president would do. Maybe my dreams are too lofty. Maybe my expectations are too high. I don't know. Maybe I'm the loony one here. That's a possibility, but I'm leaning on the side of that. I'm not on the wrong side of the argument on this one. I think that my stance is not unreasonable to say, hey, how about we interpret the Constitution for what it says and not what you think it should say? Just a thought, And we're going to move on to the next kind of topic that I wanted to talk about here. We're gonna save China for last. Folks, because I wanna talk about another social commentary thing. So another thing that happened that I saw a lot of discussion about online was the fact that Alyssa Milano opened up about her 2 abortions, as the left put it. Oh, she talked about such a sensitive topic, which I always find it interesting when the left turns it into a sensitive topic, when half the time they're walking around in vagina suits and pussy hats, and they're like, let's kill them babies. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Woo, And then all of a sudden, when they're trying to when they're trying to push their argument on a more like face-to-face, eye-to-eye level, then they turn into it's a more sensitive topic. It's something personal. It's a difficult decision. And fair warning, I'm using Perez Hilton's website. I know, no bias there. I know. But I got this one on purpose because I knew that someone as left-leaning as Perez Hilton, they would really pinpoint exactly what my criticisms are going to be focused on. So let me bring this up here. So you have Alyssa Milano who talks about these abortions on a podcast, and she's unapologetic about it, of course, because, why should she, according to her? And there's a couple of things I read through this article before the stream, and there's a couple of things that really stood out to me on like how warped this woman's worldview is. I mean, it's incredible to a certain point here. So let me scroll down and just read some snippets about what Alyssa Milano was talking about. So here she says, in 1993, I had 2 abortions. I was in love for the first time, and in the breathless way you can only be in love when you are young. It was huge, overwhelming even. It filled every part of living, and it was a joyful and exciting and powerful time in my life. Okay. So already here, the stage is set. I find this way of starting her story very interesting because it's a very selfish, inward-looking stage that she's put, right? Because she's not talking about the circumstances of her life that led to that, in the sense that a lot of times when I hear arguments for abortion, a lot of people are talking about outside forces coming in, forcing either debt, extenuating circumstances like rape, incest. There's always this argument of all these things that women are subjected to. And this is an interesting thing that she doesn't go direct. I mean, she does get into that eventually. Don't get me wrong. She'll fall into this typical leftist tropes of what their arguments are for abortion. But the thing that I find interesting is that she didn't start with that, which it's an interesting way of starting your story, because I still view it as incredibly narcissistic and selfish to view it in that way. But it's an exceptionally narcissistic and selfish way to start a story about you're talking about killing life, killing 2 innocent lives in a time where it was everything was joyful, everything was wonderful. I was in love. It was a passionate time for me, which could be used as a premise also to say that her judgment was clouded, which she doesn't, though. Which I also find funny, that she puts up this whole premise, yet she also doesn't use it for that reason. But let's move on. All right, so she's talking about saying that she was surprised that at 21, she just turned 21, she knew that she got pregnant. Whoopsie, hit my microphone here. Sorry about that. And she was, quote unquote, not ready to be a parent. Which that's an interesting statement as well. A lot of people say that. A lot of people say that and still have the kids. This isn't a unique phrase that I've heard of people that have abortions alone. This is something that most people that have kids will say. They're going to say, I didn't realize how much I was unprepared to have children. And this is very common. I mean, there's no manual, there's no training course, there's no preparation. Most people, unfortunately, go into relationships not even thinking about the consequences of marriage and the fact that children will come into view into that world. and how your behaviors before, during, and after will affect those children. A lot of people don't think about that. That's something that they should think about. But moving on, this is another thing that really kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and I'll explain why. Now she goes, it was devastating. I was raised Catholic and was suddenly put in conflict with my faith. Keep that in mind that she says I was suddenly put in conflict with my faith. A faith I was coming to realize empowered only men to make every single decision about what was allowed and what was not allowed. I had a career and a future and potential. And also, I suffer from sometimes crippling anxiety. So, let's break this down for a moment before I continue. We'll read the second part too in just a moment, but this is one thing I want to focus on. And I don't know if Alyssa Milano is ever going to hear this, but I want to address her for a moment directly. If someone wants to post this link to her so she can listen to this and tell her this is the timestamp to listen, please do. Alyssa, how you doing? Listen, a few things. You don't know anything about Catholicism. If your perspective is that the Catholic Church empowers only men for every, quote unquote, every single decision about what was allowed and what was not allowed, you really don't know anything about the history of the Catholic Church. You really don't. Because I can give you a good list of doctors of the church that had a very huge impact on how the teachings of Jesus in the Gospels were transformed to something practical and a living thing for both men and women. I could give you a big list, but I can even just give you one to start with. St. Rita of Cascia, for example. She was incredibly influential. And last I checked, she was a woman. And there have been women involved in the church since the very beginning. That's why there is a devotion to the Virgin Mary. Women have a very important and big role in the church. This is a typical like leftist and or anti-religious thing that that is argued. I've heard this so many times that I hear people say this so much. It's gotten to the point where it really kind of irks me to hear that, because it shows a profound ignorance, an absolutely profound ignorance about the history of the Catholic Church, what its teachings are all about, and what is quote-unquote allowed and not allowed, because that's not really what the church is. That's not really, and I'm not going to go into a whole like 20, 40-minute diatribe talking about the Catholic Church and its teachings. Maybe one day we'll have a little theological stream where I can go deeper into these sort of topics. And I would actually love to have a guest in that scenario where we could have a priest be part of the discussion as well, because it would be very insightful to have someone who has a long and a large theological study to dip into, to get into some really nitty-gritty discussions about these sort of things, which I find many times you have people like this who don't know what the hell they're talking about, frankly, and because they were raised Catholic, they think all of a sudden that makes them an authority. It does not. Because first of all, if you're raised Catholic and your parents didn't know what they were doing and they just kind of went through the motions, guess what? You don't know anything about Catholicism, and neither did your parents. And I'm not saying it to bash on superficial Catholics. I'm not saying that to bash her parents specifically. It's just a reality. Many people, and not just Catholics, many people that follow a specific denomination of a religion, many of them kind of just go through the motions when you're raised that way. you don't really delve deep into the under the hood of that religion and its history, its theology, its the reasoning behind all these different things, interpretations of scriptures. A lot of people don't do that. And if she did, let's assume for a moment that she did, and that's the interpretation she got out of it, then she needs to re-examine everything about what she studied, if she did study, which I don't think she did, because this shows a clear lack of any sort of studying and understanding or research done into Catholicism. But let's also look at that whole phrase. I was raised Catholic. I was coming to realize whatever. I had a career. I had a future and potential. I suffer from crippling anxiety. Again, insanely narcissistic. Insanely narcissistic, inward-looking, egotistical. It's all about her. Not one phrase of this whole thing is dedicated to the fact that, you may have a living creature growing inside you. You might want to look just slightly beyond your nose. And I knew, so here, let's continue. So I knew at the time I was not equipped to be a mother. I knew at this time I was not equipped to be a mother. And so I chose to have an abortion. I chose. It was my choice. And it was absolutely the right choice for me. It was not an easy choice. It was not something I wanted, but it was something that I needed, like most healthcare is. Okay, first of all, let's look at this last sentence. That's not healthcare. All right? Killing an innocent life is not healthcare. And I will say that over and over and over again until people realize that when they try and equate healthcare with murdering an infant, if they try to equate those two, until people keep doing that, I'm gonna keep saying no. That is not healthcare. So basically, this is a very one-sided view of everything. I wasn't equipped to be a mother. I chose to make an abortion. I believe I'm absolutely right in the choice. She throws in this little, it wasn't an easy choice, which a lot of people that do abortions do that because they're trying to portray this internal struggle. Oh, I know that, it's not an easy choice. But the thing is, see, this is the funny thing. When they throw this little thing out there saying, oh, it wasn't an easy choice. Well, if it's not an easy choice, aren't you conceding a little bit that if there was an internal struggle about how easy a choice this was, then deep down, if it creates a little bit of a conflict in you, that it may not be the quote-unquote absolutely the right choice, And I think and it's funny that they throw those little things in there because I think they try and do that to make it sound like they're trying to make themselves not sound like cold-blooded murderers, I believe. But at the same time, it's revealing. It's revealing about, their thought process, if it is indeed true. Which in her case, I don't know. It may or may not be true. From what she said about abortion, I have my doubts that she even cared to the point of having any sort of difficulty with the decision. I don't know if it's necessarily something she didn't want. Was it? I don't know. I don't believe so. She seems very much focused on herself, on her situation, on her career. It didn't really seem like that was something she cared about. She only thought about herself. And of course, you have Perez Hilton going, wow, very vulnerable, very real. Oh, please. Please. Give me a break. Anyways. So moving down, she continues, I refuse to allow anyone else's bullshit morality to force me into a life of premarital celibacy. I refuse to live the narrative that sexual pleasure is for men and that women exist to deliver that pleasure. My body gives me pleasure. Nobody will try and say that he was at fault for enjoying sex with me, but you can be damn sure that the men enacting these laws think less of me for deriving the same pleasure from him. Let me pause. This is a very loaded series of statements here that I want to break down just temporarily. First of all, it's not bullshit morality. There has been universally throughout in the entire history of mankind, all different societies and cultures, and effectively, in one form or another, all these societies and cultures have generally within the same ballpark agreed on a right and a wrong. So, removing the religious discussion from this, let's take out the in this specific case, we're talking about Catholicism. Let's remove that for a moment because we're not really talking about religion per se. We're talking about right and wrong. Societies in general have always reached a certain conclusion about what is right and what is wrong, as I just mentioned. So to just dismiss any concept of morality as just something that's bullshit that someone else is forcing onto you, that is actually BS. That is a relativistic point of view of the world that, honestly, it's a cop-out. It's a logical fallacy and it's a cop-out. And I've always found that to be the case because there's also like just you look at demographics and studies and statistics, and generally speaking, when you have more celibacy and you have a traditional marriage and you have children in a traditional home, the relationships between the couples are better. The relationships between the children and the parents are better. There is a healthier psychology in all of that. So, again, this turns into another personal thing. Again, I refuse to live in a narrative that sexual pleasure is for men and that women exist to deliver that pleasure. I don't know where she's getting this from. For a very long time now, and even before that, I mean, this is the funny thing. I've never read anything throughout history that, like in all the studying of history that I've done, ancient texts, there hasn't been something. I don't think there exists one scratch of ink on a piece of parchment or something like that has ever said that's an existing narrative. That's a narrative that people like her make up. I mean, look how old the Kama Sutra is, for example. And if you don't know what the Kama Sutra is, it's this, I'm not going to get into that, but it's a book all about sexual positions. And that is ancient. That's ancient stuff. And even in that, there's nothing distinctive saying that book is only for guys because they'll be the ones deriving pleasure and that's it. So this is a stupid narrative that people like her put forth because they're trying to twist the world in this worldview that there's this patriarchy and that women have been kept down throughout all history and all this nonsense, which is it's absolute nonsense. All right, and I don't even care about this whole thing, like this whole section about her talking about this, saying my body gives me pleasure. I don't care, Alyssa. I really, honestly, that it makes me sick to think about that. I mean, looking at a picture of you, yeah, no, I don't want to think about that. I have a very visual imagination. Don't say stuff like that because it's going to put horrible images in my mind. And then they say that the pill is not. She continues here. They'll tell you that the pill is 99% effective at preventing pregnancies. Yet a few months later, I found I was pregnant again. So I had done what I knew to do to prevent pregnancy and was still pregnant. So once again, I made the right decision to end that pregnancy. So let's get this straight. She got an abortion. Several months later, did she say here? A few months later. Generally, that's what, a couple months, 3 months. She got pregnant again, even though she was on the pill. Well, no, and she's done, and she says here. So I had done what I knew to do to prevent pregnancy. Apparently not, because the pill alone, if you know that there's a 1% chance that it may fail, you may want to have a plan B. Like a condom. Or, I don't know. In 1993, I don't know if there was a widespread use of intrauterine devices. I don't know. If there was, maybe you could have had a trifecta going. Do all three. If you're so concerned, maybe you should do that. I don't know. But then she again just makes the grand assumption of, I did the right decision to end that pregnancy. And of course, Perez Hilton goes all stupid and says, oh, what a very powerful message to hear. Again, very powerful. No, there's nothing powerful about that. It's sick. It's sick. And then this is the last part. I'm going to move on because this is just making me it's pissing me off. It's making me angry. So I will not have my children, my beautiful, perfect, love, kind, and inquisitive children who have a mother who was so very, very ready for them. I will not have my career. I will not have the ability or platform I use to fight against depression with all my heart. I would never have met my amazing husband, David, whose steadfast and immeasurable love for me sustains me through these terrifying times. 15 years after the first love had fizzled, my life would be completely lacking in all its great joys. I would never have been free to be myself. All right. So, regarding the stupid nonsense about freedom from oppression, from women, audacity, blah, blah, blah. This is all garbage. This is stupid. This is just this last bit that she talks about is just absolutely asinine. I'm not even going to get into it. But this is the thing that a lot of people really got pissed off about and really latched onto when she was saying that my life would be completely lacking all its great joys. So basically what she is saying here, and I don't think this is a loose interpretation. I don't think this is my own personal interpretation. I think it's pretty reasonable to make this conclusion when you're saying that in order for you to have a complete life full of all its great joys, you had to murder 2 babies to do that because they were inconvenient to you. I'm sorry. That is sick. That is absolutely sick. And if I was this woman's child, I would be horrified, absolutely horrified, that she views life with such little meaning. And she's such a narcissistic person and such a selfish individual that it was only fine for her to have kids when she felt she was ready for them. And her career was the only thing that mattered. And I don't even know what her husband today would think about that, because I don't know if he was aware that she had these 2 abortions before they got married. But the fact that he married her, it wouldn't surprise me if he's also as liberal and idiotic as she is with all these sort of things. So that's the end of this article here. They have the link to the podcast if you want to listen to her actually say it. I don't want to get into all that. So I think we're going to move on to the final kind of part of what I wanted to talk about here. So let me bring that up very quickly here. Hopefully, I won't have a boomer moment. Here we go. All right. So as I mentioned about the all sides thing, this is one of the articles I'm gonna feature. All sides. Hold up. There we go. So there's been a lot of talk about a lot of criticisms from the left and some on the right about how Trump deals with trades. With trade deals and things like that. So this is something that I find very interesting because no matter how many times people criticize him, it seems like Trump ends up always being on the right side of things, oddly enough. And I know this drives the left absolutely bananas. And possibly for good reason, because they've just been making themselves look like complete idiots over and over and over again. But it seems like China has capitulated. So there's been a lot of talk about China this past couple of weeks and about the trade wars and how first China seemed like they wanted to make a deal, then they started saying no now, and it seems like China is reversing course. And this is allsides.com. This is a very interesting, like I was saying, it shows different things here, different sources, and it's giving you like a more center perspective, or a leftist perspective and a right perspective. And it gives you the source here like Fox News, Politico, USA Today, which I don't think USA Today is like a centrist. It's actually quite left-leaning in my view. And Politico is a bit more left-leaning than what they say here. This is like left-center. No, Politico is a bit more leftist in my view from what I've seen. But regardless, as you can see between all these kind of interpretations of what's going on, yeah, pretty much China has capitulated, has come down to the table saying, okay, all right, our currency has hit an all-time historic low. We're getting hurt by these tariffs. We want to make a deal. And that's what the tariffs are all about. Trump actually, believe it or not, whether you like him or not, agree with him or not on the trade deals, he's actually been using them effectively with a lot of different countries to bring them to do what he wants them to do for the benefit of America. And he's not necessarily saying that those countries can't also have their own benefits, but he just wants America to have a fair shake in it. Like Mexico, he convinced Mexico to actually do more about immigration than Democrats, for example, using trade and trade agreements and tariffs and things of that nature. So whether you like that or not, you have to give the man credit. At least I would. In this scenario, you have to. So this is very interesting. But the other thing that's happening that's been going on for a little while now are the protests in Hong Kong against the communists, against the communist government of China. This is amazing to me to see that. You have a human chain that they formed. They're waving American flags because they want freedom. They want what we have here in America, and that's inspiring to see that. It's very inspiring to see that. And what's ironic to me is that the Democrats are arguing for the communist side. They're arguing for the socialist side. They're arguing against freedom. And they're saying, "Oh, we stand by the protesters." Oh, I got a little notification here in my chat. What's going on? Yeah, I know, right, Chetnik? Kneel, China, kneel. That's a Kitty reference for those that know Kitty. But anyways, it's pretty interesting to see that. And it's pretty interesting to see that Trump is actually getting China to do stuff. And you have protests happening in Hong Kong. And you see, like, there's a lot of movement and momentum happening with that. And let me bring up another article that I saw here that kind of has to do with because China's been doing this social credit system, which is also part of why there's these protests there. But let me show you this article here, that's happening here in the United States. You have Silicon Valley. They're building a Chinese-style social credit system. If you haven't heard about that, there's a link here. I could talk a little bit about this. But it's basically, they give you a quick rundown here. It's a technology-enabled surveillance-based nationwide program designed to nudge citizens towards better behavior. The ultimate goal is to allow the trustworthy to roam everywhere under the heavens while making it hard for the discredited to take a single step, according to the Chinese government. So basically, it's a form of control. And social media has already been doing a lot to shadow ban and control narratives online. I mean, Google has pretty much, with all the leaks, they are trying to manipulate elections. They're trying to de-people people. They're trying to deplatform individuals. The reason why, for example, I'm streaming primarily on bitwave.tv, free plugin for bitwave.tv, is because it's an absolutely free platform for me to say whatever I want. And other platforms make it incredibly difficult to do that. YouTube makes it incredibly difficult to do that. It's so difficult to navigate around YouTube. I had been banned for 90 days. I just got off the ban, and hopefully this whole discussion that I had about abortion and transgendered will not get me banned again. I hope it doesn't. We'll see what happens with that. But you have Twitter shadow banning. You have Facebook locking, purging people off of their platforms. Which reminds me, here's your daily or your regular stream reminder. If you use Facebook or anything owned by them, Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook itself, the Messenger, get rid of those off your phone. Delete Facebook. It is a horrible, horrible company. All they're doing is stealing your data and selling it. They don't give a crap about you. It is not secure in the very least. It's horrible, and you should just delete it, remove it. That's the best thing you can do. But moving on, Silicon Valley wants to do this sort of thing. They want to do the same thing that China is doing to basically silence people that they don't agree with, which 9 out of 10 times is going to be a conservative. So it's a very scary thing to think that the tech giants have such power that they want to do something like this. And I think it's a very dangerous thing, and I think that these tech companies really need to be put in check somehow. I don't like the idea of government getting involved. I don't like the idea of government putting their finger on the scale when it comes to to markets and business. However, this is getting to the point where it's actually having a negative impact, not only in the markets and not only within services and products that are being provided to people. It's also affecting people's day-to-day lives. I mean, if a company has so much influence that they can ruin a person's life, or they have so much influence that they can sway elections, this is very troublesome. This is something that's very bad, and it's not good for any society whatsoever. It's really a bad direction to go in, and I do hope that there's some way that we can, combat this and surpass this incredible dictatorial and fascist corporate environment that we have in Silicon Valley. These people think that they can rule the world, and that's dangerous. That is incredibly dangerous because they have the monetary power to actually influence things. So I think this is something that really needs to be looked into in one form or another. And I do know that there's been some discussions at the White House with that social media summit, and Trump has been saying they're monitoring the situation. I just don't know what kind of good solution can come out of it, because it's one of those situations where it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. I view. So it's kind of bad. It's really kind of bad right now, and I'm hoping that through these discussions and through maybe some like if certain corporations are declared public utilities, that may change things. Maybe. I don't know. So it's something that I have been putting a lot of thought into to see, what could even someone like myself, because without divulging too much about myself, I'm very much immersed in the tech industry and web development industry, computers, techs, websites, things like that. I've been very much involved in that for quite a while, and as someone who's been involved in that, I've kind of seen this whole thing from the very beginning. I have been talking about this sort of thing. Anybody who knows me knows I've been talking about how terrible Google is for a very, very long time. I've been talking about how terrible social media is for a very, very long time. And I've been telling people, don't give them your data. Don't do anything personal on Facebook. Don't provide photos. Don't provide media. Don't do it. Just don't. And I've been telling people how horrible Google is, and I've been arguing with people online for a very, very long time. I know, arguing over the internet, I lose from the very beginning for doing that. But the point is that this is something that I've seen that has existed for a long time, and a lot of people have just ignored it. Let's see. Chetnik from Bitwave is saying Google is on its way. Same with Facebook. They are pretty much both exposed as CIA InQtel incubated companies from DARPA Tech. It wouldn't surprise me if there's some government involvement in that, to be honest with you, because I know that with the whole Edward Snowden thing, that there are backdoors provided to the government. I don't know if the companies themselves are necessarily all government related, but they definitely do work with governments. I mean, Google admitted they were, and a lot of other Silicon Valley companies work with governments. It's like China, to help them censor people. Cocaine Mitch from Bitwave, who the F gives a pro Google? You'd be surprised. A lot of people that are in the web development industry, and the tech industry, people that work for not necessarily Google per se, but they work in that sort of environment where they develop websites and apps. They will say that these companies, they're private entities, they can do what they want, which on one side is slightly true, but not really. They are beholden to certain regulations. They are beholden to their stockholders. They can't just go and be willy-nilly whatever they want, but they do have a lot of influence. And I've had this argument a lot of times with people over this sort of thing, because they think that Google, just because Google says don't be evil, they think that Google is good. But Google said don't be evil. They never said be good. Yeah. So you kind of run into that catch-22 thing where, you, as someone like myself, I want the internet to be open. I want the internet to be a free platform. I want companies to have freedoms to do the wonderful experimentation that they do. Sold out from Bitwave. Hey Abyss, did you see Justin Trudeau's socks? I'll comment on that in just a moment. Sold out. I'll just wrap this one thing up that I was talking about Google, is that I do want the internet, and I like industry to not have too many shackles around their ankles. I want the internet to be a wonderfully open experimental platform, as it always has been. But at the same time, when that freedom and experimentation is used to actually hurt people in real life, hurt their well-being, just because you don't happen to agree with them, that's a problem. And that's the problem that needs to be addressed. And unfortunately, I don't have a solution at this point. I don't have an opinion on what would be the best solution for that. And hopefully, something can be decided soon before this next election, because I know Google's going to do their damnedest to try and skew it, and that's bad. But Justin Trudeau sucks. Let me see if I can actually get a picture of Justin Trudeau's socks here, because they are pretty hilarious. Let me hold up. Let's see if this. Nope, that doesn't show it. Hold up. Trying to see if I can find it. If someone has that picture, if you can send it over to the chat, that would make my life so much easier. I want to see if I can find that real quick. Here, hold up. Where is it? Legger, I'm not finding it. I'm finding like pictures from last year. That's not what I want. I don't know why it's showing me that. I think it's showing me. Yep. Okay, I got it. At least I got one picture that shows a little bit of it. Hold on, let's see here. There we go. Let me go here and bring up the browser again. All right, transition. Here we go. As you can see here, where my little cursor is, look at that. The Trudeau socks. See, this is the thing about Trudeau. All right. The guy is a massive mangina. Let's just be clear. The guy has no spine, no masculinity whatsoever. The guy, to me, he's a closeted gay man. That's just my opinion. And if he is, I don't care about the fact that he's gay, or if he isn't. The thing to me, the thing to me is this: you're a world leader. All right, let's say, and I know that it's still Canada, but bear with me. You're the leader of a country. All right, you're the leader of a country. You're going to a summit to represent your country. What do you wear? If I was representing my country, I would do my damnedest to make myself look so freaking like leadership material, solid, strong, and I'm not talking about being macho or anything like that. I'm just, that's right. Trump is about to push him over with his gaze. Yeah, he's about to zap him. Well, pew, pew, pew. Anyways. No, it's just ridiculous. This guy, I don't know what goes through his brain. He's mired in a lot of problems too. And it's the guy is just, he's weak sauce. He's absolute weak sauce. The guy does not portray himself to be a strong leader in any shape, way, or form. From what I see, he definitely I've never even seen. There's one comment here that he shops in the women's department for sure. Possibly. I've never seen men's socks of that design. Maybe where I shop, they just don't carry that kind of stuff. I don't know where he shops, but yeah, weird. It's weird. It's weird for me to see stuff like that. And some people on the left are saying, "Oh, he's just comfortable with his masculinity that he can wear like prissy stuff like that." Maybe, but again, even if he is, if you're a world leader and you're going to be, rubbing elbows with other world leaders, don't you want to portray yourself as such? You want to portray yourself at the same level as everybody else, saying, "Hey, I'm one of you guys. We're dealing and wheeling, talking diplomatically about stuff. We're all here. We're all representatives of our countries. Let's just show it." If again, like I was saying, if I was, "Hey, Meave, bitwave.tv, hi, Meave," it would behoove me, if I was a world leader, to portray myself in a certain light if I want to be taken seriously. But that's just in general. That's not even just world leader stuff. That has to do also with just anything that you do. If I want to be taken seriously at a job interview, I'm not going to show up in Bermuda shorts and a wife beater. I'm going to show up in a suit, in a professional suit, look professional, look as if I know what I'm talking about. Look at the person in front of me and say, "Hey, you want to hire me. Look at my level of professionalism, my level of experience. Look how good I am." And that's the same thing at a world leader level. What you want to do. To me, it makes sense that that's how you would want to portray yourself. But this guy, he just keeps making himself look like a complete fool. He's a giant mangina. He's weak sauce. And he's also mired in, he's a bully. He's mired in scandal because he was trying to use government entities, if I'm not mistaken, to silence people and oust them because they disagreed with him. His approval rating is tanking horribly. This guy, I don't think he's gonna last that much longer. He has not recovered from all the scandal that he's mired in right now. So, Trudeau, keep them socks, because you're gonna need them once you're out of government and out of office. Because I don't think you're gonna be there for a very long time now. But I think we've reached the end of our stream here. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming and listening to me babble on about stuff. Please follow me on Twitter, Gab, Minds, and Parler. And share, subscribe on different platforms. Follow me on Periscope, on YouTube. I archive everything on BitChute and YouTube. I'm also on DLive. Check out DLive.tv. I'm on, of course, Bitwave.tv. And if you're interested in non-political talk and gaming and streaming of games and things like that, I'm also The Eternal Gamer. Check that out on Mixer, Twitch. And I'm also adding some other platforms for gaming as well. And as always, I wish everyone a wonderful week. I want to thank all you kids for listening to Storytime. And if you want to support conservatives, please do so. Streamlabs.com/theeternalabyss. I can't talk. Streamlabs.com/theeternalabyss. Please support and donate if you can. I really appreciate that. And we're going to call it quits for tonight. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Thank you.